So today our focus is on a very deep topic, which is parents and mental health. So hello and welcome everyone to a new series by SafeTalk. So here is where we talk about all things mental health that not many are brave to talk about. And today we're collaborating with clinical hypnotherapist Divya from MindPositive, and also to our lovely guests, which is Cylma and Ashima. So today our focus is on a very deep topic, which is parents and mental health. And of course, we're going to go deep into the raw emotions, the challenges, the joy, and the most important part is the mental health, right? So, and I read that actually yesterday I read there is like 1 in 10 women who experience postnatal depression, and I didn't expect that it's that high. In fact, I saw somewhere else that says it's 1 in 5. So it's quite common, and then it's not even just in women, right? It's also in men. And so I'm curious to know, Divya, can you explain what is postnatal depression?
I think Ashima would
She
be more
might.
appropriate for that.
So I was 37 when I conceived my first child, and I had a very smooth and easy pregnancy. Everything was going fine until I actually delivered my son. Within the span of a couple of weeks after I delivered my son, I started feeling quite down. And that feeling wouldn't go away. Like a lot of times you tend to feel bad or low, and then it goes away, in a couple of hours or something. With me, the feeling of being low was persistent. I was in Brisbane, Australia at that time, and there is a medical officer who comes in to check on the well-being of the mothers right after their delivery, and the nurse who came in to have a look at me quickly realized that everything was not in order, and that I wasn't really okay. So this feeling of lowness, or the feeling of, as we call it, depression, settles in with a lot of responsibility. A lot of time we all think that we know what it means to be a parent, but with the birth of the baby and the things that are involved in looking after the baby, the other social relevant aspects of being a new mom, and then in your mind you tend to think that, okay, you want to do everything perfectly, and when you're not able to do that in the first few spans of having delivered, all of that takes a toll on your mental health, so to speak. So in my case, when the nurse came over, she decided that I wasn't well, and she said that you need to be hospitalized. The thing is, I think a lot of us tend to give parental advice, and then we actually become parents. So it's very easy to dispense advice to somebody who has not been through this themselves. But depression is a very real thing, and like you said, what I have read is like 1 in 9 mothers go through some sort of depression. It could be baby blues, where you feel a little low and then get over it and move on with your life. It could be something a little bit more mild depression, or it could be something severe like, postnatal psychosis. So it varies in degrees, but in my case, it was somewhere between depression and psychosis. So I would say it's a real thing, and I would say that more people should talk about it. And this is the perfect platform to start talking about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. So to kind of continue that conversation, I also read from a research in Canada. They said that 44%, which is less than half percentage of parents, said that they felt quite confident before the birth of their first child. But then afterwards, after the child was born, that 44% now went down to 18%. So now they're less confident, and only a few are confident about their parenting and being part of the parenthood. So would you say, was it different before you gave birth? Like, since you had postnatal depression, was it different? Like, were you more like excited and felt more positive and expected very different for the after progress?
For sure, I would agree with most of the stuff that's written there. So while I was pregnant, I read through Dr. Spock, I read through Baby Love, read a lot of books, talked to a lot of friends who were already mothers, organized my baby's room, had the baby crib, started shopping for my child, and I thought that I knew it all. But a couple of days after that, it was little things like waking up in the middle of the night, taking care of the baby, preparing the formula, breastfeeding, learning about all those things which you read about, but when it actually comes in practice is a completely different ball game. So I would say that before the arrival of my son, I was a pretty confident mother. And like I said, I thought I had it all under control. But once the baby actually came, it was the responsibility and the magnitude of looking after a child became so much that it actually affected me mentally. So yes, you're right. It's a lot easier before the baby comes, but the actual responsibility sets in only after the baby comes and a few days later.
So you can be completely like think, oh, I'm fully prepared, but then it will be look very different once you actually go through it and experience it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I saw as well like some conversations from mothers. They said that, oh, there are the type of people who are like, I want 12 kids, I want a lot of kids. Like they're so into having children and very good with children, but then it's kind of like crushing to be that kind of person and then experience postnatal depression. And I heard that it could be very detrimental and to the point that you want to harm the baby and to the point that you feel like I'm not fit to be a mother for this baby and you just don't want to hold the baby. So in this case, what would be the ideal thing, the first thing that is important for mothers that go through this for you? What would you say?
So I would say the first thing that needs to remove, that's to be taken care of, is the society expects mothers to do it all.
Right.
But whereas that's not how it was and that's not how it should be, because there is a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. But in today's nuclear world, in the absence of village, the people surrounding should understand is that everything doesn't fall on the mother.
Right.
And that okay, if you can't help, then stay away, don't advise and don't judge the person as well. So there's a lot of pressure on the mothers to be perfect, to do everything, handle the child, also go to work, also do your part as a perfect wife, the perfect mother, everything. No, it's not possible to do that. So number one, the onus is to remove this tag from the moms that once you're a mother, and it's all on the mother. Father is not
in the picture.
So suddenly, till before the child comes, there is this whole romanticization in advertisement and movies about, shopping, painting, preparing the nursery, this, that. Actually, it's nothing like that. It's about staying up late, sharing the responsibility. Because a couple of years ago, the entire family was there to look after. So the mothers could just rest. The mother's body goes through a lot of changes before having a child and after having a child. Mentally, physically, there's a lot of hormonal changes. The mother's body is recovering. So in those days, yes, the mother got all the care she needed because all she needed to do was rest, relax, recuperate. Everything else, so the food part, the financial part, and looking after the baby's health was taken care of by others. But in today's world, everything is falling on her. And the partner is usually busy working, probably extra time, because probably in today's world, before the child came, both of the partners are working, and 80% of the time, the mother stops working. So from a double income, no child family, it becomes a single income plus an extra member family. So there is a pressure on the father as well, definitely a lot of financial load. Plus, they have to come home and share the childcare chores or whatever tasks. So number one is the society to stop expecting from the mothers and to start giving out. Even as neighbors, if you can sit back and judge, then you can also go and help.
Right.
And so that is the first change that we want to see in the society. And good thing in Ashima's case, she was surrounded by people who were very much in tune to looking out for any issues, and they immediately spotted that she needs help. Whereas in Asia, it's still the last thing that crosses someone's mind to go find medical help or go for therapy. So that's another thing, that if a person needs help, encourage them to go get the help that they need, pay for therapy, pay for medication, because the sooner it is taken care of, the better it is.
Right.
So
Basically the help shouldn't just stop at like, oh, I saw her feeling miserable and then that's it, just from observation, but then doesn't come in and ask like, okay, maybe I should help you with this journey, right? And even in terms of like for fathers as well, I saw I heard from a podcast, this father shared that he was going through anxiety as a parent. And then he said it doesn't work for people to just come in and say, stop, you don't have to worry about this. Because he had this called health anxiety. So he was always worried about his own health and then his child's health. And then his wife would be like, stop, it's okay, no need to worry about anything, there's not everything's fine. So I guess logically we could all say, we could think that it's fine, but when it comes to mental illness, it's much more crazy and much more scary to go through that. And then they said that the most important thing is definitely support, and not in just verbally, but also to be there for them and to help them distract themselves from this mental illness and then finally recover from that process.
So I think that the stigma that is attached to mental illness needs to be removed, because what I would like to say is that, of course, it happens. It can happen to anyone.
Right.
You could be fine one day and tomorrow your, chemicals in your brain could go off the rocker, and then, you could probably start feeling depressed. So it's not your fault. You cannot be held accountable for the feelings that you might be going through, either postpartum or even otherwise in a general sense. Support can be there, but you as a person are also responsible for your own mental health well-being. If you feel that you're feeling out of sync, or if you feel that you're not feeling 100%, then you as a person can reach out to your friends or to a mental health professional and find out what could be the reason, and if needed see a professional completely.
So the stigma isn't just society's responsibility. So even as individual, you have to remove your own self-stigma.
That's right
like,
too.
oh,
Yeah.
I'm fine, and then keep messing up and then
Putting it
affecting
up
other
and
people.
down.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And also, I'd like to point out that as an observer, some people try to suppress whatever they're feeling by telling themselves, I'm fine. But even if you're not a close friend, even if you're a neighbor, have the courage to walk into the household and tell the people in charge that I think she needs help.
Right.
Sometimes families listen to outsiders more than their own members. Like if I was going through it, I come from an Asian background. I can guarantee that if I was going through it 20 years ago, if I went and told my family that I need help, probably they'll just brush it down saying, nah, just wait for some time or something. But if it was a neighbor or an outsider who came in and said, hey, I think your doctor needs to go for therapy, probably
It would be different.
It would work, because then they take it seriously that someone outside the circle is observing, so maybe something is off. So
Right.
it's basically about being out in the open and being accepting about issues and people as from any point. And yes, if you're feeling it, learn to give voice to your feelings. But also if you're an observer, learn to have the courage to take a small action for whatever you observe and whatever you feel.
I see. Okay, so definitely it's a responsibility of many people, and then if you can help, then do help.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what do you say? The tagline would be that it's time to change the narrative. So mothers are expected to do it all, but no, it is the society should know that no, it's not completely her responsibility.
Right.
Everyone should pitch in, and no one's perfect, so stop judging on perfection.
Right. And earlier you were talking about the romanticization of parenthood, right? And me as a social media user, however, I feel like now on TikTok, I don't know if do you use TikTok?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of different a little bit for younger generations. They started to collect, like mothers would share their experiences on TikTok and say, oh, this is what I go through, this is the health risk, and you have to sacrifice your time, your space, and then deal with tantrums, which all of those are facts, right? All of those are real and the reality. And so the younger generations would compile all of this and put it into this one long list where they said reasons to not have kids. So this put fear in a lot of people. And even to me, it kind of gave an impression that, oh, parenthood is all about suffering and sacrificing. So for any of you, do you think that that's good? Like, is it all just about suffering as a parent?
No, absolutely not.
It's not suffering, it's just the
Absolutely
lack
not.
of help. And yes, sometimes it does get too overwhelming. For many people, it does get too overwhelming because, like you said, current generation is growing up in a nuclear environment.
Right.
Probably till they held their own child, they would have not even seen a real baby being handled. And it's all in the books and everything. So probably the child, when they hold their own child for the first time, is probably the first time they're actually feeling a child. So the preparation, first of all, as a couple, it shouldn't be a split second decision, oh, let's become parents.
Right.
They should sit through it. They should, now that the TikTok generation and people from our generation are actually talking more about it, they should actually go for prenatal classes, couple counseling, be prepared for what's going to happen. Of course, the financial burden increases, your time management shifts. You had a lot of free time before the child. You're a young couple, married, but still your own people. They want to go out on a late night drive, you could. So you're free to do what you will to do. But once the child comes in the picture, your responsibility increases. So are you prepared for all this? So I would advise the young generation to first go for the prenatal classes, the prenatal counseling, and decide, and then mentally be prepared. Visualize everything before you actually take the leap, I would say.
Right.
Yeah.
I would just like to reiterate that my depression happened after my first child, but a few years later, I decided to go in for the second child. So my suggestion to the TikTok users or this generation would be exactly what Divya said, that you need to be prepared for it, but there is a lot of joy in parenting. The joy in parenting does not decrease with the increased responsibility.
Right.
Because when your child takes the first step or when she finishes high school, the joy is insurmountable. So there is always a lot of pleasure associated with parenting.
So it's rewarding at the end
It
of
is
the day.
very rewarding, yes. Yes.
Alright, so basically, like, although it is true that there are part of the struggles, but the joy and the reward is also true, and it should also be talked about.
That's right.
Yeah.
So also I would say,
Yeah.
suggest that so postnatal depression comes in stages. So there is mild postnatal depression, which is purely because of stress, lack of sleep, lack of nutrition, lack of support system. So for that, just to avoid that, everyone should prioritize their time as a couple. So find help. Don't think that you can do it all. Take help wherever needed. Find a babysitter. Have your finances ready, because in today's world, probably you may not find a grandmother to come and babysit your child. So make sure you have arrangements with someone who is willing and available to come. Have a date night still. Just because you're a parent, your life doesn't change. So make time for yourself. Me time is important. These things can reduce the effects of primary depression. The next stage is, even after all this, you still feel helpless, you still feel disturbed, then probably you should go for medical help. So go to nearest GP, tell them, and probably they will help you out with therapy or medication.
Right. Okay. And basically, and another thing, like, since we're talking about mental health doesn't discriminate, right? Gender, race, or anyone. Like, anyone can have mental health struggles. And since we're talking about postnatal depression, it also doesn't just happen right after birth, right? It can take a while until you go through another stage of depression, even when your child has grown up. So I would like to know from your experience, Cylma, how does it look like to you, your mental health journey as a mother?
As a mother, again, I was quite blessed in my journey because I was back in India and I had a whole solid support system. I had my parents, I had my in-laws, and I was studying and I was working. So I don't think I even knew the term that is a postnatal depression. Maybe I was too busy and maybe I had a very better, and also had a good support system.
Right.
So when my child was 2 months old, I've gone back to work. So it has been, I think, physically very exhausting, but mentally I don't think I had the time to think. So I don't know what to say, but it was like my kids are brought up very well by my family.
Right.
And myself, I didn't find struggling in any way. So I can say my journey was very good. And coming from that support system, when I moved 5 years ago, when we came out of India, and that is when I realized the shift in my parenting style, because back in India I always had someone to rely on.
Right.
If my child was throwing a tantrum and I was not able to handle, I would just leave the child with my mother-in-law and she would be able to handle him. But when I moved out of my home, when my younger one was 3 and my elder one was 7, to another state of India, so that is when I first understood the challenges of raising children by myself. So that is when I first learned. But I think by then the child is already able to talk and tell their needs, and you yourself are aware. And it's always, I feel, I'm a very social person, so I always make friends very soon. And when I have friends who have exactly the same age of children, and I share my things. I don't consider it as my burden alone. So usually I'm a very sharing person. Sometimes I'm oversharing, I feel. But then I think that helps me to realize that I'm not alone.
Right.
So when you can take advice from my friends, or you can call back home and take the advice what to do, what not to do. And I think that's how I've raised my children. And then when I've come to Malaysia 5 years ago, so that time my younger one is already 12. Well, currently my younger one is 12, elder one is 17. So now the situation is my husband is also not with me all the time. He works in another state of Malaysia, so he's only a weekend husband. So I'm a weekday mom handling my two boys, teenagers, by myself. So I think for me it's a journey where I'm a student, I'm learning along with them, and I feel I read a lot, so I'm aware of what's the trending, how to deal with them, and also I don't tend to compare how I was brought up with how I need to bring my children. So I think it's all a learning process. And I have very good friends like Divya. I mean, very good support. Like always, when I talk to her, she it happens, and it can we do this and do that. So I think it's very important, not only family support, but having very good friends whom you can talk and can share.
Right.
That's very important.
And even though you have all this support, it doesn't mean that you're always happy or it's always smooth.
No. You are, what do you say? It's your right to have down days also.
It's more demanding than having a child.
Yeah.
Because again, so the research has shown that the marital conflict increases the most when the child is an adolescent. That's when the couple's opinions take big clash, because the father will have his own opinion about how to raise a teenager and the boundaries that are supposed to be put on them, and the mother will have her own. And in such cases, there's always a primary parent, in most of the cases, the mother, who is actually knowing everything that's going on, and there's the secondary parent, who's the father.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of our whole system, the fathers spend time away working, mothers spend closer time with them raising the child. But then the conflict arises at this time. So it's the most perplexing for the parents when the child is an adolescent. Because the decision making is not as simple as what brand of cotton clothing to buy for your child or which brand of milk powder is the best. It is nothing like that. It's about which boundaries are which works best. But in the meantime, the child is also trying to establish their own independence, their own identity. So it becomes a triangle. The child with his or her own opinions and ideas about what they want to do in life, which may not be always right, and the father with his own opinions on boundaries to be established, and the mother with her own set of opinions. So that is where a family should come together and work together to create a more safer environment for the child. Because again, my mantra when I tell parents to come for counseling is practice what you preach. Because at the end of the day, the child automatically does what they see their parents doing, then listen to what the parent is asking them to do. So you set your own priorities. When they watch you prioritizing yourself, they will feel safer, create the right priorities for themselves. So create a safe environment for a teenager. So when you are on the same plane, when you are discussing and communicating more, spending more time together as a couple, the child or the teenager feels that home is a safe place where I can explore and I can set my own boundaries safely. I can set my own independence and my own guidelines and prioritize myself. So I would say, as couples, you have to spend more time together. And of course, it's okay to argue. Argument is okay, but keep the arguments away from the teenager. By the time the teenager comes home, you should have solved your conflicts. And you should have arrived at a decision which suits both. There shouldn't be a higher party or lower party in a couple. You should have put all your opinions on the table, removed what you both don't agree with, keep what you agree with, and already reach an agreement so that when the child comes home, the table is all organized and okay, there is no conflict. I can be myself. Because you should remember the teenager is also spending a lot of time outside home dealing with their own issues. It is stressful for a teenager outside home also. So home is a safe space. When they come home to a safe space, what is your safe space? Cuddles, warmth, good food, happiness. And when they don't get that, that's when more turbulence happens in the family. So I would advise the older couples, older parents, who are parenting teenagers and adolescents, to create a conflict-free space when your child is around you. Argue, but in a healthy argue. You should have to set an example of arguing healthily also. So do argue, but if it is really getting above the hand, then argue away from your child.
Yeah. And in cases where parents do argue in front of their child and create this toxic environment, I see a lot of people, when they grow up, they're like, I want to have kids, but then I don't want to, give the same trauma to them, even though they are aware that, oh, my parents did this and I should just be doing the opposite and do everything good that I can. But at the same time, there's always this fear at the back of these people's minds is that what if I end up doing the same as what my parents did? And then especially when there's instances where like, oh shit, no. sorry, sorry, and there's instances where like, oh, I feel like I'm just like my mother. So in end of you, what would be the advice for younger generations or anyone who wants to have children but then fear that they're going to repeat this generational trauma?
Okay, I would suggest that, we all go through that about a certain point when we hated our parent. It's normal. Because it's also a process of becoming a person of your own. Because nobody wants to grow up into their parent. But we are moving, every generation is progressing differently. So when you reach a phase when you doubt yourself, like, am I becoming my parents? I would say take your time. Write down the good things that you observe in your parents. It's okay to be your parent if it is something that you approve of. And write down a list of things that you don't want to do. And once you write it down, in your subconscious, you already have the yes and no's set. So when you're following something that says yes, it's okay. Because again, there is genetics, there is science. You cannot be not your genetics. Mm-hmm. So there is a little bit of genetic behavior that comes in. But we are more educated, more aware. So it's okay to sometimes be your own parent. But yeah, you can also, as an individual who is more aware than your parents, set your own examples of what to do. Like, I think, especially as Asians, not only Asians, I've spoken to many middle-aged people who grew up in toxic environment, and all they wanted to actually hear was a sorry from their parents. But parents never apologize, especially the generation before. They would never agree that they've been on the wrong, and they will never apologize. So the shift in future generation, future parents, is it's okay to apologize. I apologize to my kids. I'm sure they do too. So if I feel I'm wrong, and when they are expressing their viewpoint, I feel okay. Oh, I get your point. I'm sorry I did that to you. Or I'm sorry I took that decision. You should have spoken up to me. Next time I will hear you out before I make some choices.
And I think it's good for children to realize that parents can make mistakes, that there is nothing like a perfect parent. You cannot be a perfect parent. You are growing as your kids are growing up as well.
Every day
so we learn along the way. So like Divya said, it's good to apologize when you've made a mistake so that the child would feel safe enough to make mistakes in front of you and come back and say, Mama or Papa, I think I made a mistake. So yeah, what the point that Divya raised is absolutely crucial in the journey of parenting.
Also, a lot of ego has been attached to being a parent as to, I want to keep up my face in front of my society. I want to show the society what kind of a child. No, do not raise your child out of your ego. Raise your child as a responsibility. You're not raising a child for yourself. You're basically raising a child or a proper individual as an offering to the future. What kind of an individual would you want to offer to the future? A more responsible, sensible person, because your child could be the next prime minister for all you know. So what is your image of your child when they are in such a leadership-oriented position? So parenting is like guiding the child about how to navigate the world that they are going to grow up into. It is not about being perfect. Perfection is just not there. There is no such thing called perfection, because what is perfect for me may not be perfect for you. So it's a myth. Perfection is a myth. So let's not think about that. Let's just guide our child to accept that you will make mistakes and how to handle your mistakes and how to navigate the world that is going to happen in the next 20, 30 years. How will you live in that? You should be able to survive, and also we have to understand that we are growing older. They are the ones who are going to go into the future.
Right.
Things that were relevant for us in our 20s do not even exist in their 20s. So, just be more growth minded, read a lot, explore, be curious always, and also never stop being yourself just because you're a parent. Always go out and mingle with your circle so that you're not so attached to your kid. It shouldn't be always about my child, everything. Yes, child, it's he or she is part of your family. Child has his own or her own circle of friends that they are going out with. You should still maintain your circle of friends who share your interests, where you get to release your feelings and emotions and share more, and create your own separate world and keep going. Just because you're 40 or 50, don't say, oh, I'm done. No, that is actually harming the future, because the world is going to live up till 100 with all the medical technology and science available. So be curious, be growth minded, keep learning new things.
To get outside of this just being parent.
Yes, exactly.
That should be just 10% of your world. You should also live for yourself, live for your job, find a new career. I have friends who are stay-at-home moms till 40, and then after that they did a course and they decided, no, I've been at home for too long. I want to go start working. And they did something that they liked, baking. People have started taking a baking profession. I know of a lady of the age of 80, she started writing. Yeah, so keep growing, find your own life as well on the other side. And in a way, you are guiding your child as to how to grow old. You're setting an example of how to live a life beyond just being a parent. Yeah.
And also at one point, once your child reaches a certain age, you can't just still put them in the same, home, the same bubble. You have to let them go, right? But for Cylma or Ashima, do you feel some sort of like strong attachment? Like, do you fear that, oh, one day my son is going to go out and then I won't be able to live without them or something like that? Do you ever feel that sense of attachment?
Okay, my take in that is like we are already preparing ourselves because we are, and conscious parenting is our trend nowadays.
Yeah.
So we've been preparing, I think, for a long time. We know that they will go one day.
Right.
So what I feel in my case, what I do is I keep myself occupied. I have taken a course. I'm studying a course. Then I've joined Toastmasters. So I have a lot of things which I'm preparing myself that when I have the time, I will focus more on these things. So I'm just building it up now, so that I don't have to, suddenly feel that, oh, what do I do with my time now? That my child is not there or my child doesn't need me. My boys are already 13 and 17. They don't need me as much.
Right.
Like, I think the basic thing of food and, cleanliness, that is met. And I'm at home, so I can observe them. I understand, but I don't, I don't go into their privacy and I just let them be. I keep a watch. It's like, that in India we have this kite flying concept. You fly the kite, it has a roll of the thread, string. And the string is you let the kite fly as much as you want. You don't leave the string completely. So I like that concept very much.
Yeah.
So it has quite a long string. So you keep on turning as much as your kite wants to fly.
Yes.
So that
Fly
go as high as you want, but the string is still with you. Yeah, but it's not that you don't want to pull it back too tight, it may break. That's the concept we have. We have like kite flying season in India.
Yeah.
So when the wind is it's usually around January 14.
There was a survey done a couple of years ago about what do parents in this generation, what do they want from their child? No parent said, I want to see my child as being a doctor or an engineer. No. 90% of the survey said, I am happy to see my child being happy.
Yeah, exactly.
So that applies the other way also. That once your child becomes an adult, they are happy to know that their parents are happy and not sitting there and sulking and missing everything there in the emptiness. So just for your child's happiness, sake of their happiness, go ahead and live your life. So it's in a way still you're looking after your child by keeping yourself occupied. And go write a book, write a bestseller, make your child proud.
I can add to Divya's point because I can take an example of my parents. I'm an only child. So I used to always worry if I leave India, what will happen to my parents. But when I look at them, like they are more active. My father is 80, my mother is 73, but they're so involved in their church. There's this community. My mom, like, she's not spoken to me from 2 days. She says, "Don't call me, I'm busy." Because she's involved in some, they have this community things.
Yeah.
So they have these competitions like traditional cooking and all. She say, "I'm busy, they don't call me." So, so it makes me happy to know that even though I'm so far away, and like they're occupied. So it's a very important point that as children, like we are in the middle, like we are raising teens plus we're having aging parents. So we are like the balancing, pillar. So we are happy to know that they are happy, our parents are happy. And as we are happy, we can keep our children happy. It's very important point. This thing.
You can be passionate at any age.
Yes,
Like
exactly.
yesterday we went to the Temple of Fine Arts. There's an 81-year-old lady who's running the show. And she was talking about it, just generally how it works. But I realized how passionate she is about her dance, because when we requested that can you show us a 5-minute piece, she turned into a 5-year-old. I couldn't believe that at the age of 81 she was dancing like a 5-year-old. The sudden sprite in her steps and her eyes, so that is the thing that keeps you alive eventually. Find your passion. And don't say that I never had a hobby as a child. Or you can find something at any age. Just go and explore. And it really, people pinch on money probably, but no, it doesn't really cost too much to find what you're passionate about. So yeah, everyone should, that's called leading by example.
So growing old doesn't mean slowing down.
No way.
No. I guess that's why I also see, I like your story earlier, because now I also see my grandmother. I can't remember how old she is, probably close to 80. She's also that type of woman who's like busy. She has his appointments with friends. She has this religious events and stuff like that. It's like we have to know her schedule. When is she free?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's the positive side, because as I believe that my father would feel, he would feel relieved and happy that his mother is doing fine,
Right.
and is finding her own interest, and that he can also focus on his own children, which is me.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Right.
So my father-in-law was 71 when he started cooking. He had never cooked in his life. My mother-in-law is a fabulous cook, and he had just retired, and he decided that he had too much free time. So he started going through YouTubes, he started going through recipe books, and he certainly turned into this master chef at home. Once he had done that, at the age of 75, he actually wrote a book on soft skills. In between, he managed to take a course on soft skills, and he used to go out and volunteer in companies teaching soft skills to underprivileged students. So it's like how Divya and Cylma have said, that if you're setting an example like that for your kids to follow, then your kids are not only relieved, they have something to look forward to in their old age as well. So it's like Divya said, it's always important to have a passion, to find your niche and to grow from there.
Right. All while still being a responsible parent, responsible child, and knowing that mistakes is okay, and then learning is also important.
Yes.
So also, to a certain age, it's your responsibility. But after a certain age, it's also, you have to create an environment where they can come back and be open about their mistakes.
Right.
Not be shy to tell your parents, oh, I made a mistake. You should create an environment where they're safe to come and say, hey, I messed up. And know that, oh, this is a place where I will be supported and I will be, given the space to grow over my mistakes. Because mistakes, you grow over it, you think about it, and then, we've heard about great scientists who have failed miserably hundreds of times before they actually came out with the breakthrough inventions. So, yeah, if you really want your child to be a genius, and create the safe space for mistakes as well. And yeah, be more progressive about how teach your child from very young age how to look at mistakes. Mistakes are an opportunity to learn. When you got it right, you got nothing go beyond it. But a mistake is what you should look for, because that gives you a learning opportunity. So yeah, that too. This is conscious parenting.
I also can add to that. And adding to that, I feel also communicating with our teenagers. Because I've noticed that when they come from school, if I ask something, it will be only a single word answer. Yes, okay, fine, that's it. But then usually I have this small tradition of getting one of them into the kitchen to help me in the evening. I don't have a part-time cook or maid or anything, so I call them in. So I've seen that they talk more when they're helping me out in the kitchen than if I would ask them questions. So that is my my friend thinks that my children are very good cooks, but this is my ulterior motive that to get them to talk. So and also we have this set up tradition of doing the grocery shopping together.
Yeah.
So when we are doing that they talk more that time because that time they're off their devices. I feel that's also one way to keep them off
That's
a
the
device.
best way to get them talking by
Talk.
distraction. When you're active, your hands are active.
Yeah, you can't be.
Your mind
bit
will
more relaxed.
go into a more relaxed mode.
So I think those two are my mantra for keeping them the communication lines open. So calling them into the kitchen to help me out is my motive. They agree to that. They do that very nicely. But that's my thing. I get to know about the things what's happening in school or some stuff or anything like that. Yeah.
And what I've realized is that instead of judging our kids in terms of technology, the fact that my child is always on gadget, he's always doing that. If you actively show interest in what he or she is watching, they might actually open up a little bit more. And then if you set the boundaries that this is how much you should watch of this, they would respond to you better. So I think as a parent, you also need to actively instead of judging them all the time that what they're doing is not correct or, you need to set boundaries. I think first you need to actively take interest in what is the content that they're watching. I think it is a two-way street. So with my kids, when I'm driving and there's music on and there is new pop star who's come on the scene and I don't know anything about him or her, I would always ask my child, what's the name of this star and what genre does he or she sing in, and they would get really interested and they would tell me, Mama, you don't know this? You've been driving for such a long time. You should know the name of this pop star or the rock star. So I think, like Divya said, you need to create that safe space for your kids to open up and to realize that they can talk about anything under the sun with you.
And basically, the parents have to participate as well.
They have to be active listeners. They have to be active participants. Yes.
Yeah, because that also reminds me, just like last week, my mom said it's kind of sad how like newer parents, if they go out like for a wedding ceremony or somewhere in the public and they're like, okay, here, Coco Melon. So you can just stay silent in your chair and just watch.
Yeah.
And then the parents just go out and then socialize. But then my mom said, back when I was younger, when I was a child, she said she would be the one also participating and then like, oh, Barney. And then she would also dance and sing together.
Yeah.
And then my dad would encourage like, oh, let's go and find more CDs for you to watch.
Right.
So even though it's children's content, but parents can also involve and then like also creates like connection, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And social media is all not so bad. So there is this current thing about parenting that, screen time, my child shouldn't watch ban YouTube, block them out of Instagram. No, social media has its own. There are science experiments at the school. They didn't explain much that my child learned more about it from TikTok. So you can't say that it's not bad. And again, it's the future that's growing. Allow them that, but maybe make them aware of things to avoid. So I just tell my child, you're okay, go ahead, watch TikTok, YouTube. But there are certain contents, always be connected. If your mind's not comfortable with what you're watching, just don't. Because probably it is something you really don't and doesn't suit with your values. Extra 18 plus content and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I have made them aware. I don't create an age that you should be. No, at the age of 30, no, if you know, you know. But so you also know that this is not what you're going to school for. Does it enhance your knowledge? Does it make you a more brilliant person and more knowledgeable person? Then yes, go ahead and do it. And hence my child, as of now, I have a youngest who's 14. She knows where to draw the line. She herself deleted Instagram saying, I need to be away for 3 months. So it is now tuned into her. Again, probably because I still write. I'm still a book and pen person. So probably she sees that I keep my phone and everything away. I have my laptop on, but whatever I am reading or writing or studying, watching, I do tend to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
So hence, probably I hope it's working. I hope it's a good thing. And only time will tell whether it's good or not.
That's doing
But
it.
I just feel in a way it gives your brain time to calm down from the screens because screen can stimulate you sometimes too much. And writing is a calming activity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Find the right balance and don't restrict them or like steal their phones and they're like, oh no, you can't do this for the whole month.
Yeah, give them the responsibility. Let's not always be the policing people here. So after a certain age, allow them to take control and decide what their boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start young, by the time they're 25, when they're living on their own, they will be trained and already confident enough to say no, to set their boundaries, so that they can avoid things that they can get into trouble with.
Right.
So teach them young, and don't always think it's your responsibility to monitor them, police them for you. How long are you going to do that? That's
I'm stuck. But I think we've covered quite a lot, right? We've covered from before and then during the pregnancy, after, what was it, the mental health aspect, and also raising. Did you want
How
to
about men?
men? Oh, men.
Men and mental health is a much needed topic in today's world, because men traditionally all over the world haven't been raised to connect with their feelings. Because again, I know there's a lot of pride attached in having a boy child, especially in the previous generation. Why? Purely because you get a breadwinner home. So men have been raised as you are the one who's going to go out, bring in the money, and feed the family. Men cannot cry, men cannot feel, men cannot talk. But that is not how it is happening, and because of that, the current generation of men are facing a lot of mental health issues, which they have very cleverly learned to mask. So it's easier to identify when a woman is going through a problem, but it's very difficult to identify when a man is going through an issue mentally. So I would suggest that if, as men, probably you should start talking with yourself, start connecting with your feelings, and start giving words to your feelings. And other than men, I would want the society to start accepting that if a man is crying, let them just cry.
Yeah.
Don't shut them down, because crying is actually releasing a lot of the stress it releases. So it's okay for a man to cry, and it's okay for a man to feel. It's okay for the man to talk.
To be vulnerable.
Yes, to be vulnerable. Yes, there's strength in vulnerability. Accept your weaknesses. There are weekdays. Everyone has ups and downs, and it's okay for men also to seek help, therapy-wise, medical-wise. Yeah.
And so it's also important for parents to teach their sons.
Yes.
From early age, so that they grow up and know that, oh, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah, there's no task that has been designated for, because I don't know how things have changed, but still back home in India, I can see that, oh, men don't cook, boys, it's my boy child will not cook, I will feed, my girl child will cook, and so. So there is nothing like that. If you have hands that work, you can cut veggies, you can saute it, you can cook.
Yeah.
So let's not create tasks and assign a gender to it. Let it be fluid. Whoever can do what, let them do it. There are women who are strong, let them lift. There are men who are great cooks, let them cook. Let's just mix everything, and yeah, let's accept the fluidity in future.
Men and women are equal, and we should all talk about mental health for both mothers, fathers, sons, and daughters.
Yeah. End of the day, we are humans.
Yeah,
Yes,
all
so
humans.
let's accept the human side of it.
Do you have anything else to add about like men's mental health? Any personal experience?
Nothing personally, but I have a friend whose husband does get anxious, and sometimes this anxiety translates into him not being able to travel. And if I'm sure he has sought help in some form, but a lot of times it is put under the carpet because of the gender that you belong to. So, like Divya said, I think more men need to come out and think that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to talk about it. But I think also the load on the men, conditioning of men over the years in society has been that they have to be the main providers for the family. So a lot of time they tend to think that if I talk about this, who is actually going to go out and earn the money? You know, for example, in a family where the mother is a stay-at-home mom, there is double load of the husband to actually go out, make the money, make sure that the family is being well fed, and everything, all the needs of the family are being met. So in a situation like this, if the man feels anxious, it becomes that much more difficult for him to reach out. So in a scenario like that, the spouse or the stay-at-home mom or the wife has to be that strong pillar and has to create that safe space for the husband to be able to talk about his feelings. So it is a much required step, but I think it will take a little bit of time before men can actually start talking about their feelings a lot more freely.
And that also reminds me that people say marriage is not 50-50. Sometimes it's 80-20. And then you can count when your partner is, not feeling well, then you can be strong for them.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't matter men or women.
Yeah. So at different times, different genders will be the stronger party.
Mm-hmm.
But then for that, there has to be an open communication between both husband and wife.
Right. Yeah. A general advice that you could give to any parents out there before we kind of close it.
I would say go with the flow and don't be restricted by the do's and don'ts that the society has put on you. You know your child best. Don't raise your child as your stand for the rest of the world. Raise your child out of pure love and out of pure understanding.
Right.
And create, because we are living in a nuclear world, so be open, create a channel of free flowing communication within the house, and that onus as the head of the house lies on the kids, because they are, as when the child is young, it is the mother and father who are the head of the house together.
Right.
So lead by example and create a more fluid environment where they feel safe and free to come and talk about everything and not feel judged.
Yes. Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you, Ashima and Cylma. It was such a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, even though I wrote so much and I tried to be, very technical and follow all these steps. But I feel like going with the flow and learning all the different experiences and stories really opened my mind, and I'm sure a lot of other people would find the benefits in this as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.